Shalom. Welcome to Hebraic Awakening. We're going to just dig into really quickly on the topic of Sodom and Gomorrah, and specifically, why was Sodom destroyed from an Hebraic perspective, not from our Western thought. Okay? And before we begin, please consider helping us to serve the widows and our elders and the poor in our surrounding communities here in North Carolina. Please visit the seniorsocietyNC.com. And if you feel comfortable using Cash App, use $Christina07. All right, because this particular topic ties into how we are supposed to treat the stranger, the widow, and the poor. Now we see in Genesis 18, we're going to start there because I want us to understand why culture is so important when we are trying to understand the text. We're trying to understand what the ancient Israelites, our ancestors, went through, their thought process. And so the nomadic people, okay, we are a nomadic people, especially during Abraham's time. The nomadic people back then were known for their hospitality. That is something that even when you look at the Bedouin culture that's still alive and thriving, they are known for their hospitality. So we as Shemitic people, we're a nomadic people, and especially the nation of Israel, we are supposed to be known for our hospitality. All right, so this is even before we were created as a nation. This is Abraham. And Genesis 18:1. Yah appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my master, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed and then go on your way now that you have come to your servant." All right. So we can see that Abraham is just being himself, being hospitable at this time. Now we believe that the angels to be, messengers of Yah. However, this just proves the kind and generous nature of our people during that time. We are known to be a hospitable people. All right, so when we look at Genesis 19, now we're getting to Lot, and he's going to show the same hospitality. Verse 1. The 2 angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. "My masters," he said, "please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning." So here we see the hospitality of Lot, which I know that Abraham taught him. Now, this is setting us up, right? And you're going to have to do some digging in order to find out about Sodom's culture. Like the Sodomites, they were off the chain. And I know that we always equate them with being sexually perverted, which they were. However, homosexuality, that's just not the meat of why Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. That is a Western thought process as they try to translate the scriptures and interpret the scriptures with their Greek Roman mindset. Remember, we got to put back on our ancient Hebraic mindset and do a little digging. So Sodom had a really crazy thought process, a nihilistic culture. Okay, so in your spare time, you want to look this up. Nihilism, okay, this is the belief that there is no such thing as right or wrong. There's different levels, but we're just talking about the gist of their belief. No morals, there's no principles. You can base your morals on the way you feel. You really don't have none, but it is purely individualistic and it's arbitrary. Okay, these ideas of their perverted vision of justice and morality is subjective to the person. There is no absolute right or wrong. There is no rational justification and no criticism of their thought process, right? The only obligation they have is to themselves. They do not allow criticism that would tarnish their private interests, okay? So historically, the chief iniquity of sodomy is that they closed off the gates to strangers. All right? They closed off the gates to strangers. We're going to talk about a few stories. As you try to research, you're gonna see these stories. And one story is that they just created a whole legislation around their viewpoint, right? Because Sodom has such great wealth, right? They were really a fertile and beautiful and thriving city. This led to pride and greed, all right? So they overturned laws of hospitality to travelers, all right? And then not only did they overturn the laws of hospitality to travelers, they progressed to prohibit charity to anyone. So they hated the poor and they hated strangers. And the reason why they hated strangers is because they were different. You know, if you're coming from your culture and outside and you're traveling through, you're going to think different. You're going to behave different. And they did not want that. All right. You had to be like them. You had to think like them, behave like them. And if you didn't, there would be dire consequences. All right, let's talk about it. There are beds that were specifically made to torture travelers. So what they would do is if a traveler came, they would, pretend like, oh, come on in. We have beds for you. And if the traveler was too short, they would stretch them to fit the bed. It don't even make any sense, does it? And if they were too tall, they would cut them, literally, to fit the bed. Just torturing travelers, just their own sadistic thought process to keep their culture the way it was without anyone having anything to say. Another story you will find is that a traveler, if they came in and they were hungry, they would give them the coin, the diner, the coin, and they would put their names on the back of the coin. And so as the traveler traveled to try to buy bread and water and things of that nature, the people would purposely not sell to him or her. So as they traveled throughout the whole city, they could not find anyone to take their money or their coin because they were marked. And they would literally starve the travelers to death. Like they would just starve them and they would die. And they got off on this. Like they got pure joy out of this. The sadistic nature of Sodom. One more story. A young girl, she felt sorry for the beggar, and she gave the beggar some bread and water. And they found out, and they supposedly had took the girl, stripped her naked, rubbed honey all over her body, and plastered her to the wall, and waited for bees to sting her to death. All because she broke the legislative law that says do not show any acts of charity while you living here in Sodom. Now let's go back to Genesis 19 and finish. The angels, they told Lot no. They said, we will spend the night in the square, right? Because they already knew what was going on in Sodom. Like they knew. Like, Lot, you about to get that work because you are treating strangers kindly. You are showing hospitality, and no. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them. All right. So let's talk about this. These are people who torture people for a living. These are people who get a thrill out of watching people starve. And so, yes, this is sexual perversion, because what they are showing people who come against them is that they will sodomize them as an act of aggression and to show dominance and power, right? So I'm not going to get real graphic, but we know in prison, right, this happens. And it's really an act of aggression and to dominate, right? And so this is what they were doing in this context, in this verse, right? So, we know what Lot, he pleaded with them. He told them he had daughters, and they didn't want to hear it, because the point of the matter is not that they were so full of, lust in the thought process that they just wanted to have sex with the three men because they were attracted to them. They wanted to dominate them. They wanted to punish them. They wanted to assert their aggression upon them, right? They wanted to show their power, that you are different and you're not going to come up in here with your ideologies and, sow seeds that, we may be doing things wrong here. They were just so deathly afraid of people coming in there, shaking up their way of life. Now, let's kind of fast forward, because we know what happened. The angels, they blinded the men, and they told Lot, hey, where's your family? You got to get out of here. So we know that part of the story. But the remnant of Sodom's immorality just lingers on you when you have stayed in that type of an environment for so long. Why Lot stayed, I know he picked that, section. I don't fully understand it. Why would you want to stay there? But let's just read the text to see, because I'm like, you can see the remnant of immortality in Lot and his daughter's thought process, right? And so they go to the town of Zoar, and the angels say, I'm not going to destroy that town. You go into it, okay? Go into the town and take your wife and kids. We know what happened to the wife, and go there, all right? And they actually do make it to Zoar, right? Verse 23 in Genesis 19, they make it, and they see the destruction, right? But Lot just, I don't know what he was thinking, Because here's the thing. He left Zoar, verse 30. He left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. Now, the angels already said nothing's going to happen to you in that city. But I guess when Lot saw the destruction, he was just scared, and he thought being in the mountains was going to be better. And it was not. Fear had overtaken Lot. And because fear has settled in and he moved from the place of safety into his own place that he thought was safe, here the remnant of immortality of Sodom creeps in. And his daughters does something that we think is just wicked. But really in their defense, because their father had took them away from the town and settled them in the mountains, and they there with nothing and nobody, and they don't know, if it's people alive or not, or what happened in the town of Zoar. I'm just trying to, think here and read in between the lines that they said, what? We got to preserve our family line. However, Yah didn't tell none of them to do that, because if they had stayed in the city of Zoar, they wouldn't have failed to this immoral way of thinking. And it is just what it is. And so it's like, for us as Israelites, who is living in one of the, I believe is one of the worst countries that there is when it comes to morals and values. It's just so wicked here. We have this haze of we're moral, but in the core of this country, we are not, right? And we're living here. And I can just envision us leaving and having the remnant of American culture in our psyche. And we take that into the land. This is why I always advocate for healing. Because when you don't heal and you don't allow the Most High to get all of Sodom out of you, you will do some of the customs that Sodom do. And you're going to, mask it as whatever you want it to be. And so I thought this was really a fascinating take on the understanding of Sodom and why it got destroyed. There's a lot of things that is going on, and we as a community have a lot to say. And if we sit down and take the time to study Torah, we really would keep our mouth closed, because let's go to Ezekiel. Okay, let's just go to Ezekiel. What chapter is this? It is 16. So we're going to go to Ezekiel 16. And I'm laughing because it's not funny, but we always got something to say. And the Most High, he always going to give us that clap back. And we think we are better than the other nations right now because we have awakened and supposedly returned into Torah. And we see things taking place in the world, and we're mocking, we're cheering, and the Most High, I know he like, y'all is still in captivity. I have not gathered you back together. And you guys are still doing the same thing that you were doing before you got in captivity. And I'm talking about as a whole. I know there are some of us who are really trying to walk this walk. But I'm talking about as a nation, right? So let's see this as a nation. Let's read verse 49. Because you can read the whole thing and he giving us that work. But I want us to do some reading here so we can hear us and hear how the Most High says, I don't care what they did, you worse than them. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and the needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore, I did away with them, as you have seen. Samaria did not commit half the sins you did. You have done more detestable things than they, and have made your sister seem righteous by all the things that you have done. Bear your disgrace, for you have furnished some justification for your sisters. Because your sins were more vile than theirs, they appear more righteous than you. So then, be ashamed and bear your disgrace, for you have made your sisters appear righteous. Okay, he ain't through yet. However, I will restore the fortunes of Sodom and her daughters, and of Samaria and her daughters, and your fortunes along with them, so that you may bear your disgrace and be ashamed, all of you who have done in giving them comfort. And your sister Sodom with her daughters and Samaria with her daughters will return to what they were before, and you and your daughters will return to what you were before. You would not even mention your sister Sodom in the day of your pride. You would not even mention your sister, I already read that, sorry, before your wickedness was uncovered. Even so, you are now scorned by the daughters of Edom and all her neighbors and the daughters of the Philistines, all those around you who despise you. You will bear the consequences of your lewdness and your detestable practices, declares Yah. So I'm just saying that Sodom was destroyed and Gomorrah was destroyed because of how they treated the strangers. They were haughty. They just were arrogant, and they just were not concerned about anybody else but them. And the Most High says that we were worse than them. So y'all be careful out here in these Hebrew streets, listening to all of these, whatever you want to call people nowadays, because I do not call people teachers. I know they mean well, but no. Because he said the reason why we in captivity right now is because we were worse than them. And he's going to restore them. So we need to really watch what we say in this time, because we are not together as a nation. We cannot even be unified. We're still the same. We have awoken to who we are, and that's about it for right now. As a nation, again, I'm talking about us as a nation, not individuals. And so I hope this helps you to understand why Sodom and Gomorrah was actually destroyed, and how the Most High said that we have committed way worse sins because we know better. You know what I'm saying? And this is why I advocate for giving. This is why I advocate for helping the poor, covering the widows, reaching out to our elders. It is one of the most important things that we can do as a nation in our faith walk, but we don't do it. We will give to the craziest stuff. I've seen it with my own two eyes. People talking reckless and people giving $150 a pop. But when you talk about giving to the poor, it's quiet. You can hear crickets. And I'm like, what is wrong with us? It's a spiritual thing. It don't matter how many scriptures we give concerning the poor, the widows, and the fatherless. Israel is just not going to do it. But guess what? I'm going to do it as an individual. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to make sure that I teach my children and my grandchildren to do it. Because that's one thing that the people around us is going to know us for. And it's not because we're showing off what we're giving. It is because hospitality and charity and acts of kindness is just the way of life for us. That just comes with who we are. It should be synonymous. People should know you, and you should understand who to give to and how to give, right? That's another topic. However, if you're led by the Ruach, you can't go wrong covering the poor, covering the fatherless, and covering the widows, because the scripture tell you to. So it's a no-brainer for me, but for Israel, we're blinded. So, I hope you learned something, because I did as I studied this from a Hebraic perspective. And I pray that we will repent and return back to the instructions of Yah for real and not just say it. All right, until the next video. Shalom, everyone.